Contort their bodies and use their fins for swimming. They swim in an S-shaped movement.
Like a snake?
Kind of like a snake does. Kind of the same thing. You can use muscles on the side of your bodies to push yourself along through the water if you can contort your body in an S shape. And that's what most fish do. And they use this back tail to push a lot of the water backwards to provide thrust. And the special muscles that are on the sides of their bodies to help provide this movement are called myomeres. Here's the muscle on the sides of a fish body that does that movement, myomeres. Can you say myomeres?
Myomeres.
That's when you eat fish. That's what a lot of that meat you're eating is these muscles.
Strong fish.
Strong, yeah. A lot of muscle there in fish. Hopefully we learned these yesterday, but if you haven't yet, there they are, the dorsal fin.
Dorsal.
A lot of fish have two dorsal fins, an anterior dorsal and a posterior dorsal.
Yeah, I have seen that.
Caudal is the one in the back. The anal fin is near the anus. What's an anus? Pelvic fin on the bottom and the pectoral fin on the side. You have to know all those on the next
What
test.
is pectoral mean?
These are your pectoral muscles.
Yeah, I know what they are. That means chest.
I think so. Yeah, it's a Latin term.
Salmon.
Salmon.
There's the operculum. We already talked about that. Covers the gills. Fish have several different types of coloration. This is called warning coloration. If you ever see bright colors on something in nature, that usually has evolved as a system of warning. Once you screw around with that fish right there once, it's called a lionfish, it'll it has real pointy barbs here that can sting you and stick in you and hurt you. And so once that happens to you, you learn it as a juvenile, you aren't going to mess with that again. And you quickly learn that anything that's bright colored, you won't mess with. This makes it so that if you're bright colored, you won't get messed with. And that's a common defense of organisms, not only in the ocean, but everywhere. If you see a bee, it has yellow stripes, because yellow and black stripes, that's easy to see. And that means don't mess with that thing. And you usually won't mess with anything that's black and white, even if it doesn't have a sting. Some of these organisms have evolved to have those colors and not have the sting, but you still don't mess with them because they have the colors. We call that warning coloration. We call it mimicry if it involves that. It doesn't have the sting. It's called a certain type of mimicry. Cryptic coloration you've probably heard of. That's like camouflage. It's something... there's supposed to be another picture up here of another camouflage fish. But anyway, these fish, you know what kind of fish that's called?
Flounder.
Flounder. The flounder can change their skin color. They have special cells on their sides so they can change the color of their skin to match the background.
All black flounders.
Here's a fish camouflage. Want to see a fish camouflage video?
Yeah, flounder can only be like dark colors, right? Like a brown, blackish, sandish color.
Yeah, I think they do more dark colors. I thought I'd seen some. They can change between dark and light.
I've never stabbed a light flounder.
It's true. Unless it was on.
Flounder game, George.
Unless it was on.
Let's play Where's the Fish?
Dude, you're cheeky.
Found it.
Are you playing
I already
Where's the
found
Fish?
it.
Yeah.
I found it already.
I don't see it. That'd be dead right now. How is it?
It's right there.
It's right in front of you.
No,
What are you
it's on
doing?
the left. Now it's in the middle.
It keeps moving around.
It's right there.
Oh!
What?
Wow.
I mean, what the heck? Help! What?
Yes.
Dude.
This fish. Wow.
Dude, his life sucks. He's just sitting there all day.
It's true.
Camouflage. Bruh, swear to God, bro.
That's what you actually.
Let's see that one more time.
He's right there.
I can't see.
He's really on the left, like left middle.
Yeah. He's about to move.
Slump, dump hit.
Oh, I see him now. Oh, no.
Uh,
Gets me every time.
low-key thought it was like a piece
Pretty cool, huh?
Low-key thought it was a piece of cool.
And scientifically, what do you call that?
Strong
Camouflage.
What kind of
Mimicry.
coloration?
warning coloration.
Nope.
Mimicking.
Oh,
Cryptic coloration.
dude, you're smart.
Cryptic coloration.
Thank you. I try. You should try too.
And there's disruptive coloration.
Hey, look, can you move to the left?
You'll see a lot of fish with stripes.
That's good.
Well, all by itself, the stripes don't do anything, but when the fish is swimming around grasses or coral that have lines, then the lines help it blend in. And you don't see it as well. That's what the lines are for. Sometimes the fish have spots that do the same sort of thing. If it's around coral that have a bunch of holes and stuff in it, a spotted fish will do well swimming around in that area. This fish has some lines. It also has a big spot there. Now that spot is not for blending in. That's a false eye spot. See how that looks like kind of like an eye and maybe a mouth there?
Because some bass have them.
And so yeah, a lot of fish have that. Here's how that works. If a fish is coming to eat this thing, what they do, just like a hunter that's leading a bird with his gun, a fish that's attacking that fish will lead it. And if it thinks the eye is here, it'll lead it this way, like it's going to swim to the left, when actually it's going to swim to the right. So the fish that's attacking that fish, because it sees that eye spot, misunderstands the direction it's going to move when it attacks. Wow. So it attacks the wrong side and the fish gets away.
Freak out.
It's a false eye spot. A lot of fish have that. It's usually near the back of the fish. Spotted bass, you've seen those? We call this disruptive coloration when it's some kind of stripes or spots that allow it to blend in. Counter shading, almost all fish have this. They're dark on the top, they're light on the stomach. That's a way of blending in also. If you're looking at the fish from underneath, looking up at the fish, it looks light because that matches the sunlight that's outside. And so you can't see that fish from the bottom. If you're looking down from the top, it's dark because that matches the dark underneath. So you can't see the fish from either side. That's counter shading. Yeah.
Can the sun affect the fish's skin, like make it darker, more tan?
That's a good question. Perhaps. One thing the water does is the water absorbs those harmful UV rays from the sun. So UV rays don't make it very far through the water. So I don't know if they also need melanin or pigments or something like that I don't know if they get suntanned. It's a good question. Probably not much because the water does a good job. And that's why organisms could only live in the water for so long and not on land, because there was no ozone layer. That's a good point. The next part of the reading goes into the digestive systems of fish. Fish have a digestive system that's about the same as yours. They have a mouth, usually with teeth. They chew up the food. The food then goes into a stomach where it's stored for a while and digestion begins. Then it goes through an intestine that removes this intestine here removes the nutrients from the food, and what's left is waste that comes out the anus. And so that's a normal vertebrate digestive system. When we say vertebrate, fish have it, amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals. They all have the basic same components of a digestive system. It takes a long system to get all this done, and so it's usually coiled up inside the organism. Unless you're really, really long, like a worm, you need a coiled up digestive system. And that's usually what you find in vertebrates. And so you got different types of carnivores. Most fish are carnivores. They eat meat. Some fish are grazers. Grazers eat plants or algae. And then you have your filter feeders. Some fish just swim through the ocean through heavy concentrations of plankton and open their mouth wide and take in as much as they can. But most fish are carnivores. And we aren't going to get into what type of fish does what. That's a whole lot of studying there. There's 28,000 species of fish. Lots of different types of fish do what. So we won't be, even though it's a marine biology class, you're not going to go through and learn all the different kinds of fish.
Thank you.
I know some of you are very interested in that, and that's great. You'll want to take an ichthyology class, like I took in college. Where's my ichthyology book? Ichthyology is the study of fish. I took a whole class on it. Where is it? I wanted to show you my book. Is it over here? Ichthyology? Dang it. Can't find it. Anyway, you can take that class in college if you're interested in it. But we don't go into all the types. Even in marine biology class, we don't go into all the different types of fish. Okay, so this is important about fish. Countercurrent exchange that happens in their gills. So here's a fish. This is a beautiful diagram, by the way. The water goes in through the mouth. It comes out through the gills. You can just follow the arrows and see how it comes out. Most people are confused about that. They think somehow the water comes into the gills. It doesn't. It comes into the mouth, out through the gills. And in sharks, there's an opening behind the eyes. 10 points if you can tell me what the name of the opening behind the eyes is in a shark that the water can come through and come out the gills. Bony fish don't have it, but cartilaginous fish do.
Indeed,
There's an opening behind the eyes that the water can come in a cartilaginous fish. What's it called? Come in through that opening and out through the gills. Orange correct. Purple correct. Green correct. Anyone else?
Yes, hold on.
Hold on, don't be looking it up. I'm not testing you over if you can look something up. Blue correct. Anyone else? They're called spiracles. Spiracles. So anyway, these bony fish, they don't have spiracles, so the water goes into the mouth, comes out through the gill openings. And I want you to notice something. Let's look up close at this red material here. Have you ever looked into fish's gills and you see all the red?
Yes. One time.
Those things are these gill filaments is what they're called. And they contain a whole lot of blood inside of them. And so what we'll do is we'll look at a close-up of one of these gill filaments, one of these red things that hang out in the gills. And what the red things do is they contain blood. Blood comes in and goes across the filament and then goes out. And I want you to notice something. The way the blood flows is in the opposite direction of the way the water flows past the gills. So if you follow the blue arrows here, water flows in this direction and the blood flows in the opposite direction. You can see this arrow right here showing the way the blood flows. And this is a very important biological concept that you need to know. It's called countercurrent exchange. Can you say countercurrent exchange?
Countercurrent exchange.
And countercurrent exchange means that they're going in the opposite direction of one another. And you need that to be able to get as much oxygen as you can out of the water. And the way I like to explain it is to make it pretty simple. Think about if you're driving a car. If you're driving a car in the same direction as a bunch of other cars are going, you're not going to see a whole lot of other cars. You're just going to see the cars that are around you. Are y'all with me here? If you're looking down, you're not hearing what I'm saying. Think about if you're driving in a car and there's a bunch of other cars around you and you're trying to count as many cars as you can. If you're all going the same direction, you'll count a few cars. But now think if you're driving in the opposite direction of all the cars. Think how many you'll count then. You'll be passing a lot more of them, right? Mm-hmm. It's the same reason why when you want to shake every guy's hand on the other team, you line up in opposite directions and you walk in the opposite way. You're not going to be walking the same way as the other team. You'll only get to shake hands with that one guy. That wouldn't make much sense. So you go in opposite directions and you get to hit every guy, and it happens pretty quickly. Y'all see what I'm saying? That's countercurrent exchange. You want to be moving in the opposite direction as the other stuff to get as much contact with it as you can. So if we get the blood moving in one direction and the water moving in the other direction, there'll be as much contact between blood and water as we can possibly get in a short period of time. That's countercurrent exchange. And it makes it so we can get a lot of oxygen from the water into the blood in a short amount of time by having them go in opposite directions. Does that make sense? That's a very important fundamental biological thing that happens. And it happens in a lot of places, not just in fish gills. It happens in your kidneys. The blood moving through your kidneys moves opposite to the way the water and waste leaving your kidneys move. For the same general idea. You want to get as much contact as you can. You have things moving in opposite directions. You want to see video footage?
Yes.
Heck yeah, y'all want to see video footage. Video footage of countercurrent exchange.
We're using countercurrent gas exchange in fish gills. So, we know that fish use gills to extract oxygen from the water and to release their carbon dioxide. When we look here at this picture, we can see someone lifting up the operculum of a bony fish, and we see this gill arch with these bright red gills on there. And these gills are so red because there's lots of blood vessels running through them. And these highly folded, very thin membranes make for a very good gas exchange surface. So what we're going to need to do is have a little x-ray vision to look inside of our fish here to see the four bony gill arches that we see right here. And those gill arches are supporting this very highly folded thin membrane of the gill, which I'm representing by these red squiggly lines here. And so we have an opportunity to design or look at the design of how the fish gills work. Water enters into the fish's mouth, moves across the gills, and exits the back of the operculum. And as the water goes through, oxygen is extracted from the water. So I'm going to put some numbers to this just to make it a little easier to understand. I think it really helps. And I've picked the numbers kind of arbitrarily, but it'll make the point. So imagine that the water coming into the fish's mouth has 100 parts per million of oxygen. By the time it reaches the end of the gills, it's down to, let's say, 80. So we've extracted 20 parts per million of oxygen out of the water, diffused into the blood. And now I'm going to let you be the bioengineer. You have the option, A, to send the blood into the gills from the front, so we could come in and go through here from the front and exit the back. Or you can have the option of coming from the back. Option B, sending the blood through the gills this direction and out the front. So the question is, which would you choose? Now stop the video and think about which would be the better option.
10 points if you choose it right. A or B, that's all you have to put. A or B.
C, then give up.
No.
I don't
Oh
know.
man, if you put C, I would be like, what? Pick option A or option B. You had to be watching the movie to even know what it was talking about. And that's part of the question here. Orange is correct.
I don't know if I got it right.
Peach is correct. Purple's incorrect.
Did you put B?
Stripes is correct. White is incorrect.
Knew it.
Wait, is that what the best option is?
Yeah, he just said
Did we get it right?
walking in a line. It goes straight to the
Blue is correct.
Yeah, but I thought it's how it happens in nature.
Green is correct.
I knew that was wrong.
Continue watching.
The problem with this is, you know the name of this video. If you were in my class and I were teaching this, I wouldn't talk about countercurrent till the very end. So knowing the answer is one thing, but understanding it's a whole other thing. So let's look at the why. So let's isolate this system from our fish, move the fish out of the way, and zoom in and get a little closer. Now one of the things we have to know is that gases tend to move down their concentration gradient. So if we bring our blood in this direction, choice A, and the blood's going throughout the whole body, so by the time it reaches the gills, it's fairly oxygen poor. So I'm going to pick the number 60 parts per million. So as the blood and the water meet each other, there's a favorable gradient which allows the water or the oxygen to move and diffuse out of the water into the blood. But by the time we get to the end and we've picked up 20 from the water, the blood is at 80 and the water's at 80. So our difference between the two could reach an equilibrium. Now, I did pick these numbers at random, and I could have just as easily, or arbitrary, not at random, I could have just as easily made this number 50, and then by the time we gain 20, we'd be at 70, and we'd still have a favorable exchange rate from the 80 to the 70, but we certainly would have a much less steep gradient, and we would reduce our rate of exchange. So let's turn the system around and bring the blood in from the back of the gills and have it run countercurrent to the water. So again, the blood's coming in, and we chose 60 for the blood coming into the gills, and we have a favorable exchange gradient between the 80 and the 60. Our most oxygen-poor blood is meeting our most oxygen-poor water, but the water still has more oxygen than blood. And by the time we get to the end, our most oxygen-rich blood is meeting the freshest water to ensure a favorable gradient throughout this entire system. This countercurrent exchange gradient, or exchange flow, maintains the most favorable gradients for gas exchange. So we can put the system back into our fish, and we see that the countercurrent, the blood flowing from the back of the gills toward the front, and the water flowing from the front towards the back, is going to give us the most favorable exchange gradient. And this is a very good example of formulating a function in a biological system. There are many others. For example, when we look at the heat exchanges in the arteries and the veins, and also water conservation in the loop of Henle. So these are things that will come up pretty frequently in biology.
All right. That was a good explanation. Very, very well done, sir. And that's a good picture. So you don't realize all this stuff's going on in the gills of a fish, but it is. Another interesting problem that fish have is water. Fish are living in a saltwater environment. A fish keeps its blood at about 14 parts per thousand salt. Now, do you remember what the parts per thousand salt of the ocean is? It's not 14.
35.
35.
God.
So the ocean is saltier than the fish. So what's going to end up happening is the fish will lose water. That's these arrows at the top here. The fish will tend to lose water to the ocean through its skin. The skin is pretty impervious in a fish, but it's not completely. And some water will leak out of the skin, and some salt will leak into the fish. So that leaves the fish with a whole bunch of problems that it has to solve. It has to somehow take in more water, even though it's living in salt water. It has to somehow drink water into its body and get fresh water into its body to keep its water concentration up, because it keeps losing water to the ocean through its skin. So how's it going to do this? The gills have come up with a way to do it. The fish will open its mouth to let water in, and as you know, the water comes out the gills. But the gills will extract salt from the water, squirt the salt out, and the fish will actually swallow fresh water. This can happen in the gills. The gills actively grab salt molecules and excrete them, and some fresh water is left, and that's swallowed by the fish into its digestive system and will be absorbed into the blood. So the fish can actually strain the water of its salt in its mouth and gill area. And that's pretty amazing. Most people don't know that's going on in a fish. So you get fresh water that way, and that takes care of the water that was lost this way. The fish will also pee out a huge amount of salty urine. And the fish urine is very salty. You wouldn't know that, but anyway. This is not for freshwater fish now, this is for saltwater fish. Freshwater fish have the opposite problems. But we're not studying them in this class. So saltwater fish, they squirt out a whole bunch of salty urine to get rid of the extra salt that's coming to their body. And like we said, the gills also will get rid of salt if they come across any. And so salt is excreted in the gills, it's excreted in the urine, and a lot of fresh water is drunk by the fish after it's been strained of its salt. So that's how fish survive, and you can imagine the problems this fish would have if you put it from saltwater into freshwater.
Would it die?
Don't ever take a saltwater fish and put them into freshwater, because all of these things are for getting rid of salt and keeping in fresh water. If you suddenly put it in fresh water, it's going to get way too much fresh water in its blood and it'll die. It'll die very quickly.
Like how fast?
Very quickly, just a few minutes. They won't live long like that. There's only a few fish that can go from freshwater to saltwater, and they have they've evolved mechanisms of reversing these processes.
Can't bull sharks do that?
For a brief period.
Salmon can do it.
Salmon?
Yeah. Salmon.
Hey, Pro, can't bull sharks do that too?
Yeah, I think they can actually.
My name is Santosh Kesri. I'm Director of Neuro-Oncology at Providence St.
Do fish drink water?
All living things on Earth need water because the chemical reactions that make life possible happen in an aqueous solution, which means us land animals have to drink it to keep it inside of us all the time. But what about fish? It seems like since they're always in the aqueous solution of whatever body of water they're swimming around in, they wouldn't need to actually drink the stuff. But it turns out that some fish actually do need to drink and others do not. It depends on the fish and what kind of neighborhood it lives in. Water, you should know, first of all, is really into finding a balance. If you have a membrane that water can pass through and there are different concentrations of salt on each side, then the water will always flow toward the saltier side of the membrane until the concentrations on both sides are the same. That means that freshwater fish have it easy. Since the concentration of salt in their bodies is higher than the concentration in the water, that fresh water just flows right in, mainly through their gills and into their bloodstream. They also swallow some water when they eat. I mean, it's kind of unavoidable, but they don't need to actively gulp down water. But in order to retain the balance of concentrations, the fish's tissues still need to have some salt in them, and that's where chloride cells come in. These are special cells in the gills that produce large amounts of an enzyme that controls the flow of dissolved salts, like sodium and potassium, across cell membranes. So in freshwater fish, these chloride cells work hard to bring just the right amount of salt into the fish's bloodstream. Now, saltwater fish have the opposite problem. For most of them, the concentration of salt in the water is higher than the concentration in their blood. That means that as they pass water over their gills to breathe, the higher concentration of salt outside of their body is constantly sucking water out of them. So these fish have to drink a lot, which they just gulp down by the mouthful. But since the only water around is salty, they have to filter out the salt to make it safe for them to absorb. A lot of that salt is filtered out in the fish's kidneys, but these fish have chloride cells in their gills too. It's just that in their case, those cells are constantly pumping salts out of their bloodstream and into the saltier water. So they may be surrounded by water, but no matter where they live, fish are always looking to find that balance. Thanks for asking. If you have a quick question you'd like to ask us, we're down in the comments.
He talks fast. What about the nervous system of a fish? Fish have brains. The brains are small. They can't remember a lot. It's hard to teach a fish a lot of tricks. They also have a lateral line system as part of their nervous system that I talked about yesterday. The lateral line goes all the way along the side and also branches off in the head. And what it is, it's a system, this is a close-up look at it, where water comes in through holes in their skin. There are little holes all along the lateral line here. The water can come in those holes and then spread out. And what the water will then do is push on a little cupula, which is a gelatinous raised piece that has hairs in it, sense hairs. And when this cupula is bent by the water, let's say water is rushing this way, it'll bend the cupula to the side, and that'll cause these hair cells to activate these nerve cells below it, and those send a message to the brain. So if a current, have you ever tried to catch a fish with your hand? Maybe if you've ever been snorkeling or scuba diving,
yes. You
can have a whole school of fish. I've snorkeled through a whole school of fish, and there's fish everywhere. And if you move your hand towards them, you can't grab them. They just go right around it like that. They don't even have to see it. You can come from behind, and they'll just feel it. The water will come in. It'll come into these openings.
It's too aggressive.
It'll push the cupula to the side. That'll send a message to the fish's brain. The fish's brain is getting messages from thousands of these cupulas at once from all over their body, constantly telling the fish which way water is coming in on all sides, and it can just feel that hand. And they think the fish's brain has so much circuitry devoted to this that the fish's mind can draw a picture of what the object looks like coming toward it. So it not only knows something's coming toward it, it knows something's coming toward it in the shape of your hand. And it could even recognize one hand from another hand. And
It's like Spidey sense.
yeah, it's like Spidey sense. Yeah, it can tell exactly everything around it. It's kind of the same way bats operate, and they send out a signal, and it comes back, and they can sense it, and kind of tell the shape of the room they're living in. It's a very, very accurate sense, and it helps fish navigate and tell their surroundings. And it helps them in schooling behavior. Have you ever heard of schooling behavior?
And they're always like,
So the fish will all swim together, and if one fish turns, that'll push the water towards the next fish, and it'll feel that turn, and it can turn. And they can almost turn simultaneously, almost. Just like a flock of birds goes and make all turns at once. All the fish can turn at once. And so we call this schooling behavior. And schooling behavior helps fish in a lot of ways. It's hard to catch fish that are schooling. There's so many fish, you can't really focus on one of them and catch it. It also helps fish, when they're schooling together, they can find a mate more easily. There's a lot of reasons fish will school. Sometimes if a big school of fish is coming up, another creature will think it's something larger than it actually is and be afraid of it and run away. This picture on the right is kind of interesting. Schooling behavior helps fish catch food. You can see this is showing an organism, a little piece of plankton here. And plankton can only move so far and so fast. Most plankton, if you watch them, they jump. They're standing here, and if something comes out, they jump a certain distance. And they jump a certain distance. Well, the fish that are schooling have programmed their distance between one another to be exactly the distance that those things jump. So if it jumps away from one fish, it'll jump right into the mouth of the next fish. And so they swim through these big groups of plankton, and all of them get to feed pretty easily. And the plankton are just out of luck. And so that's schooling behavior. Schooling behavior, very, very important survival mechanism for fish. This shows some schooling behavior.
Images of an underwater photographer standing next to a colossal tornado of fish has been making its rounds on the internet. It has left many people in disbelief due to the sheer magnitude of its wonders. The researcher Octavio Alberto, who captured it all, assures everyone that it is a natural event and has released the footage to put everyone's doubt to rest. He's been witnessing this phenomenon for the last 3 years, while working to protect the marine reserves of Cabo Como National Park in Mexico. He explains these are jackfish, performing the rituals of their courtship behavior. The conditions happened to be just right on this particular day, and after an hour of following the fish around, they began to execute this display. Octavio hopes his images provoke people to start thinking about the environment, more specifically in this case the ocean, dwindling fish populations, the health of marine ecosystems worldwide, and our role in it all. This stunning video has no doubt helped contribute to his goal, as we can all see what a shame it would be to lose such a magnificent performance. Take a look at Octavio's website in the link below.
So there are fish. Oh, my thing crashed. Well, we're almost out of time. There are fish that have evolved a way to catch schooling fish. They have a big razor on the front of them. Have you ever seen these fish? And they can swim into a school, and they can turn their head real fast. And that razor knocks a fish out. It's not fast enough to get away from that razor, and